I still remember the day I arrived in Lahore with nothing but a small bag and big dreams, I told Sarah while sitting on the roof of my house under construction. I had no money, no support, just me. Sarah smiled softly and held my hand. But you never gave up. That's why I love you. I looked at her and tried to smile back, but my mind went back to those hard days. I worked 12-hour shifts in a factory. Sometimes more. I used to think I would break, but I didn't. Omar laughed from behind me. Break? You were already half dead, bro. I still remember you sleeping on that bench outside the workshop. I turned to him. And you still came every night with food. Without you, I would have gone back home. Omar shrugged. Yeah, but you were stubborn. You always said, I will build a house in Lahore no matter what. I looked at the unfinished walls around me. And now look. I did it. This is mine. Sarah leaned closer. Our house, she corrected softly. I paused for a moment. Something in her tone felt different, but I ignored it. Yes, our house. Omar looked around and nodded. It's small, but it's solid. You did well. I smiled. Every brick has my sweat in it. Sarah stood up and walked toward the edge of the roof. How much did the land papers cost again? She asked casually. I frowned a little. Why are you asking that? She turned back quickly. Just curious. I want to know everything about our future home. I hesitated, then said, it was not cheap. I saved for years. Omar laughed. Years of eating cheap food, working like a machine. I nodded. Yes. But it was worth it. Sarah walked back slowly and sat beside me again. Do you have the documents safe? I looked at her. Yes. Why? She smiled again, but this time it felt tight. Nothing, just asking. Something in my chest felt slightly uncomfortable, but I pushed it away. Omar changed the topic quickly. So when is the wedding? I sighed. Soon. Sarah's family is finalizing the date. Sarah looked at me softly. I can't wait. I held her hand. Me neither. But even as I said it, I noticed something strange. Her eyes were not on me. They were on the house papers lying on the table. Omar noticed too. He leaned toward me and whispered, Bro, she's staring at those documents too much. I frowned. You're thinking too much. He shook his head. I've seen people change when money and property come in between. I snapped quietly. Sarah is not like that. Sarah suddenly stood up. I'll get some water. When she left, Omar turned to me seriously. Listen to me. I'm your friend. I helped you when you had nothing. Don't ignore small signs. I sighed. I know you care. But she loves me. Omar looked at me directly. Love doesn't stare at property papers like that. I stayed silent. My mind started spinning for a second, but I forced myself to calm down. You're wrong. Omar stood up. Maybe. But I hope I am. Sarah came back with water bottles and smiled again like nothing happened. What were you both talking about? Omar quickly laughed. Just praising your fiancé. She sat down and leaned on my shoulder. He always praises you more than me. I laughed lightly. Because he suffered with me more than anyone. Omar smirked. True. I've seen this man survive on tea and dreams. Sarah looked at me softly. You don't have to suffer anymore. I'm here now. I felt warm hearing that. But still, something inside me didn't settle. Later, when Omar left, I stayed on the roof with Sarah. The wind was calm, and the lights of Lahore were shining far away. She held my hand tighter. "Promise me something." I turned to her. "What?" She looked into my eyes. "No matter what happens, this house will always be ours equally." I smiled. "Of course. Why would I think otherwise?" But when I said that, I noticed her grip tighten slightly. I didn't understand it then. I just thought it was love. I was wrong. I remember how Sarah slowly became part of every corner of my life. It started small, almost innocent. She would sit beside me in the half-built house and point at the walls. "This room should be bigger," she said one afternoon. "We can change the kitchen layout too." I smiled and replied, "You're already designing my house more than me." She laughed softly. "Our house, remember?" I nodded, but I noticed Omar standing nearby, shaking his head slightly. He whispered to me, "She's acting like she owns everything already." I frowned. "You're overthinking again." Sarah walked toward the window frame and looked outside. "Have you spoken to Mrs. Khan about the final documents?" That name again. Mrs. Khan, the real estate agent who helped me buy the land and start construction. She was strict, professional, and always serious about paperwork. "Yes," I said. "She said everything is almost complete." Sarah turned quickly. "Almost?" I nodded. "There are still some legal steps left." Omar crossed his arms. "Legal steps always take time." "That's normal." Sarah smiled, but something about it felt forced. "Time is dangerous. Things can change quickly." I looked at her carefully. "What do you mean by that?" She shook her head. "Nothing. I just want us to be safe." Later that evening, she said something that stayed in my mind. "What if we make the house joint property after marriage?" she asked softly. I laughed lightly. "It already will be, emotionally." "No," she said immediately. "I mean legally." That sentence made the air feel heavier. Omar, sitting nearby, spoke before I could answer. "Why is that so important to you right now?" Sarah looked at him calmly. "Because I'm leaving my family for him. I should have security too." I held her hand. "You will. You have me." But she didn't smile like she used to. That night, I met my father, Abba, at home. He was sitting quietly with his tea. He looked at me and said, "I heard Sarah is getting very involved in your property matters." I nodded. "She's just helping me." Abba shook his head slowly. "Help is one thing. Control is another." I frowned. "She is not controlling anything." He sighed deeply. "I have seen marriages break because of property issues, not love issues." I got defensive. "Sarah is not like that." Abba placed his cup down carefully. "I hope you are right, Beta." Days passed, and Sarah's involvement increased. She started calling Mrs. Khan directly without telling me. One afternoon, Mrs. Khan called me. "Your fiancé asked for copies of all legal documents," she said. I was confused. "Why would she need that?" "She said she is preparing for joint ownership paperwork," Mrs. Khan replied. I froze for a moment. "Without informing me?" There was a pause. "She said you agreed." I ended the call slowly, my mind unsettled. That evening, I confronted Sarah. "Why are you speaking to Mrs. Khan without telling me?" I asked. She stayed calm. "I'm just trying to help things move faster." I shook my head. "Move what faster?" "Our future," she said softly. Omar suddenly interrupted before I could respond. "Or your ownership transfer?" Sarah turned sharply toward him. "Why are you always suspicious of me?" Omar stepped closer. Because I've seen how this ends for people who trust too easily. I raised my voice. Enough. Both of you stop. Silence fell between us. Sarah softened her tone again. I just want stability in our life. I looked at her and believed her words. I really did. But Omar pulled me aside later that night. Bro, listen carefully, he said. She is moving too fast with legal things. I replied, she is my fiancée, not my enemy. He sighed heavily. That's exactly what people say before they lose everything. I walked away angry and confused. That night, Abba came into my room again. He sat beside me and said, this is my last advice. Be very careful with documents. I nodded, frustrated. Everyone thinks I don't understand anything anymore. Abba touched my shoulder gently. No. I think you are in love, and that is why you cannot see clearly. I didn't reply. But inside, something felt tight, like a knot I could not untie. Still, I chose to trust Sarah completely. Because I believed trust was the strongest form of love. I did not know yet that trust could also become the easiest way to lose everything. Sarah called me early in the morning. Her voice sounded excited. I found someone who can help us finish all the legal work, she said. I sat up quickly. Legal work? What do you mean? Our future, silly, she replied softly. Everything should be clear before marriage. I rubbed my face. Sarah, what is there left to clear? The house is mine, and we are getting married soon. There was a small pause. Then she said, that's exactly why we should secure it properly. Something in her tone felt different again, but I ignored it like always. Fine, I said. What do you want me to do? Just meet a lawyer I trust, she said. His name is Rashid. He is very professional. That evening, I met them at a small office near the city center. The lawyer stood up the moment I entered. Nice to meet you, he said with a warm smile. I am Rashid. He looked calm, confident, and very polite. He shook my hand firmly. Sarah stood beside him like she already belonged there. Omar was not there yet. I sat down slowly. What is this about exactly? Rashid opened a thick file. Just standard property clarification documents. Sarah leaned toward me and whispered, don't worry. It's simple. Rashid began speaking in a slow, professional tone. These papers will ensure joint security, shared ownership clarity, and protection for both partners. I frowned. That sounds complicated. He smiled. It is actually very simple in legal terms. He started pointing at paragraphs full of legal words. I tried to follow, but it felt like another language. Sarah squeezed my hand under the table. It's just paperwork, she said softly. Nothing will change between us. Rashid slid a pen toward me. We just need your signature here, here, and here, he said. I hesitated. This is for the house? I asked. Yes, he replied quickly. Just to secure your shared future. Sarah leaned closer again. Please don't overthink it. I'm doing this for us. I looked at her face. She looked calm, too calm. My mind told me to stop. But my heart told me to trust her. Rashid pushed the papers slightly forward. Once signed, everything becomes legally clear and safe, he added. I asked again, safe from what? He smiled politely. From future misunderstandings. Sarah tightened her grip on my hand. Just sign it, she said. Trust me. That word again. Trust. I looked at the papers. My eyes couldn't understand half of it. I felt pressure building in my chest. Finally, I picked up the pen. At that moment, I heard a voice from the door. Stop. I turned around. Omar stood there, breathing heavily like he had run all the way. What is going on here? He asked sharply. Sarah quickly stood up. We're just finishing legal paperwork. Omar walked closer and looked at the file. His face changed instantly. What did you sign already? He asked me. I forced a smile. Relax. Just some documents for the house. He grabbed the file from the table and started reading fast. His expression darkened with every second. This is not just paperwork, he said slowly. I frowned. What are you talking about? He looked at me directly. Tell me you didn't sign everything already. I shrugged. I signed what they asked me to sign. Omar's voice rose. Do you even know what this means? Sarah interrupted quickly. He is just making it complicated. Omar turned toward her. You brought him here without telling me? She stayed calm. This is none of your business. Omar laughed bitterly. It becomes my business when my best friend is about to lose everything. I stood up now, irritated. Enough, both of you, I said. It's just documents. Omar grabbed my arm. Listen to me carefully, he said. I think you just transferred ownership rights. I froze for a second. Then I laughed. No way, I said. That sounds ridiculous. But my laugh didn't feel strong. It felt nervous. Rashid spoke calmly. There is no need for panic. Everything was explained clearly. Omar pointed at him. You manipulated the explanation. Sarah looked at me again. You trust him more than me now? That hit me hard. I turned to her. I trust you. I just don't understand what's happening. Omar stepped closer again. You don't understand because you didn't read anything. Silence fell. I looked at the papers again. For the first time, I felt something cold inside my stomach. Fear. Not loud. Just small. But real. I swallowed hard. Tell me I didn't make a mistake. Omar didn't answer immediately. That silence said everything. Sarah placed her hand on my shoulder. It's okay, she said softly. Everything is fine. But I no longer felt sure. For the first time, I looked at my signature on those papers and didn't feel pride. I felt doubt. And that doubt was the beginning of everything falling apart. The wedding day came faster than I expected. I thought I would feel happy, excited, maybe even nervous in a good way. But from the moment I woke up, something inside me felt heavy. Everything looked perfect on the outside. Lights, decorations, guests, music. But inside me, nothing felt right. Sarah was calm. Too calm. When I saw her before the ceremony, she smiled at me gently. You look tense, she said softly. I tried to laugh. I should be asking you that. It's your wedding day too. She nodded. I'm fine. Just focused. That word again. Focused. I should have noticed it then. Her family arrived in large numbers, dressed well, smiling too much. They kept praising everything. Beautiful arrangement, her uncle said. Perfect match, her aunt added. But their smiles felt rehearsed, like they were acting in a play. Omar stood beside me, adjusting my coat. You don't look happy, he whispered. I replied quickly, I am happy. Just tired. He looked at me carefully. Tired doesn't look like this. I ignored him and walked toward the stage. The ceremony started. I saw Sarah walking toward me slowly. Everyone stood up. Music played softly. She looked beautiful, but her eyes didn't meet mine for long. When she reached me, I whispered, "Are you okay?" She nodded. Yes. Just that. No emotion. No nervous smile. Nothing. We exchanged vows. I said my words clearly, but my voice felt distant, like I was watching someone else speak. Sarah said hers perfectly. But still, something felt missing. After the ceremony, guests came forward to congratulate us. I noticed Sarah's behavior carefully now. She was polite, smiling, but her eyes kept drifting away whenever someone mentioned the house or our future. That bothered me more than I wanted to admit. Later, I introduced my sister Aisha to Sarah. "Aisha, this is Sarah," I said proudly. Aisha smiled politely. "Congratulations." Sarah nodded. "Thank you." But I noticed something immediately. Aisha was watching Sarah closely. Not smiling fully. Just observing. Later, Aisha pulled me aside. "She doesn't look at you the way a wife should," she whispered. I frowned. "It's just the wedding chaos." Aisha shook her head. "It's more than that. She avoids eye contact when you talk about your future." I felt irritated. "You're imagining things like Omar." Aisha didn't argue. She just said, "I hope I'm wrong." The night came. The house was full of guests. Music, laughter, celebration. But inside me, I felt silence. Sarah was taken to a separate room for a while. I was busy meeting guests when Omar finally arrived. He pulled me aside immediately. "We need to talk," he said firmly. I sighed. "Not today, Omar." He grabbed my arm. "It has to be today." I looked around. "What now?" He lowered his voice. "I checked something about Rashid." My heart slowed a little. "Why are you still investigating him?" "Because I told you something was wrong," he replied. I turned away. "You're still stuck on that signature issue." Omar stepped in front of me. "Listen to me. That lawyer is not clean." I shook my head. "Stop. You're trying to ruin my wedding night." His eyes sharpened. "Or I'm trying to save your future." I pushed past him. "I don't want to hear this." Omar stood still behind me. "You will regret ignoring this," he said loudly. But I didn't turn back. That night, after guests started leaving, I walked through the quiet hallway of the house. Sarah's room was slightly open. I was about to knock when I heard voices inside. I stopped. Sarah was talking. And another voice. "Rashid." My body froze. I moved closer slowly, trying not to make noise. Sarah's voice was calm. "Everything needs to be finalized quickly," she said. Rashid replied, "The transfer process is almost complete. Just a few steps left." My chest tightened. Transfer. That word again. Sarah continued, "He still doesn't fully understand, but it's fine." Rashid chuckled. "He trusted us too easily." My hands went cold. I stepped back slowly. My heart was beating hard now. Inside, I felt something break. Not loudly. Quietly. Like glass cracking under pressure. I wanted to open the door. I wanted to shout. But I didn't. I just stood there. Listening. Sarah's voice again. "Once everything is done, there will be no complications," she said. Rashid replied, "And the property will be fully secured." My mind stopped processing properly. Property. Secured. Transferred. Words from every direction started mixing in my head. I stepped away from the door. My legs felt weak. I walked outside into the courtyard. The air was cold. I tried to breathe, but it didn't feel normal. Omar saw me from a distance and walked over. "What happened?" he asked immediately. I didn't answer. He studied my face. "You heard something, didn't you?" I still didn't speak. Omar's voice softened. "I told you." I finally looked at him. "I don't know what I heard," I said slowly. "But it didn't sound right." Omar placed his hand on my shoulder. "That's enough to start waking up," he said. I pulled away slightly. "I can't believe she would do that," I whispered. Omar replied, "That's exactly why it works." I stood there in silence. Inside the house, the celebration continued. Music, laughter, joy. But inside me, something was changing. The happiness I thought I had was starting to fade. And in its place, confusion was growing. And fear. For the first time, I looked at my wedding not as a celebration, but as something I didn't fully understand yet. Something that might already be a trap. I woke up that morning with a strange silence in my chest. It was not peace. It was not calm. It was something heavier, like my mind already knew something was wrong before I even opened my eyes. For a few seconds, I just stared at the ceiling. Then my phone rang. Omar's name flashed on the screen. I answered immediately. "What is it?" His voice was sharp. "Where are you?" "In bed." "Why?" There was a pause. Then he said, "Check your documents." Now. My stomach tightened. "What documents?" "The house papers," he said. "Just check them." I sat up slowly. "Why are you talking like this?" "Just do it," he repeated. I opened my drawer, pulled out the file, and my hands started shaking before I even touched it properly. I flipped through the pages. And then I stopped. My name was gone. Completely. For a moment, I thought I was reading it wrong. I checked again. Same result. I whispered, "No, this can't be right." Omar's voice came again through the phone. "Now you see it?" I couldn't speak properly. How is this possible?" He replied, "They already transferred it." My chest went cold. "They?" Before he could answer, I heard footsteps behind me. Sarah. She walked in calmly like nothing had happened. "Good morning," she said softly. I stood up immediately, holding the papers. "What is this?" She looked at me, then at the file, and then back at me. "Oh," she said calmly. "You saw it." My voice shook. "Saw it?" "Sarah, my name is gone from the house." She nodded slowly. "Yes. Just that. No panic. No fear. No emotion." I stepped closer. "Explain." She sighed like I was the one making things difficult. "It was necessary." "Necessary?" I repeated loudly. "You removed me from my own house and you call it necessary?" She sat down on the edge of the bed. "For security reasons." I laughed once. But it wasn't real laughter. "Security? From what?" "From me?" She looked at me seriously. "From instability." My hands clenched. "You planned this." She didn't deny it. That silence was worse than any answer. I turned away, trying to control my breathing. "Rashid did this?" She nodded. "He handled everything legally." At that moment, Rashid walked in. As if he belonged there. As if my room was his office. "Good morning," he said politely. I stepped toward him. "Tell me what you did." He adjusted his glasses. Everything was done within legal boundaries. I grabbed him by the collar. You stole my house. Sarah stood up quickly. Stop it. Omar's voice came through the phone again. I had forgotten it was still connected. Don't touch him, Omar said. Let him speak. I put the phone on speaker. Omar continued, they used your signature from before. The documents you signed, that was the trap. My body froze. I looked at Sarah. That night, the papers. She stayed silent. Rashid calmly said, you signed willingly. I let go of him slowly. My hands dropped. My strength dropped with them. I whispered, so it's gone, just like that? Sarah replied softly, it's not gone. It's just secure. I laughed again, but this time my voice broke. Secure for who? She didn't answer. At that moment, my father arrived. Abba. His face looked tired even before he spoke. He looked at me, then at Sarah, then at the file in my hands. What happened? He asked slowly. I couldn't answer immediately. Omar spoke through the phone instead. They transferred the house. Abba closed his eyes for a moment. When he opened them, they were wet. Sarah, is this true? He asked quietly. Sarah lowered her gaze slightly. It was done for protection. Abba shook his head slowly. Protection from your own husband? Aisha entered the room behind him. Her eyes were already red. She saw my face and understood everything without asking. No, she whispered. No, this can't be real. She walked toward me. Tell me this is a mistake. I couldn't lie. I just stood there. That was my answer. Aisha broke down crying. Abba turned away, his shoulders shaking slightly, trying to stay strong but failing. Omar's voice came again. You need to leave that house. I frowned. What? He said firmly, it's no longer in your name. Legally, you don't control it anymore. I looked around the room slowly. This room. My room. My house. Everything I built. Sarah spoke softly. You can stay. Nothing changes between us emotionally. I stared at her. You took everything, I said slowly. And you say nothing changes? She didn't respond. That silence again. Abba finally spoke. Beta, we should go. I looked at him. Go where? He looked at me with broken eyes. Anywhere, but not here. I walked out of the room slowly. Each step felt unreal. The walls I built with my own hands now felt like strangers. Outside, the house was still alive. But I wasn't part of it anymore. Sarah followed me to the door. You're overreacting, she said softly. I stopped. Slowly, I turned back. I worked years for this, I said. Years of pain. Years of hunger. Years of struggle. She nodded. I know. I stepped closer. And you took it in one morning. She looked away slightly. Omar's voice came one last time through the phone. You didn't lose a house, he said. You lost trust before that. I hung up the call. I walked out of the gate. My father followed me. Aisha cried behind us. And I didn't look back. Because if I did, I knew I wouldn't be able to leave. That morning, I didn't just lose a house. I lost the life I thought was mine. And I didn't even see it coming. I left the house that morning like a man who forgot where he belonged. Every step away from it felt like I was leaving a part of my body behind. My father walked silently beside me. Aisha followed behind, crying without stopping. Omar met us near the main road. He didn't say, I told you so. He just looked at me and said, come with me. I nodded without thinking. We rented a small room at the edge of the city. It was nothing like my house. The walls were cracked, the fan made noise, and the bed felt like it had survived too many broken lives. Omar placed my bag down. "It's temporary," he said. I laughed bitterly. Everything feels temporary now. Abba sat in the corner quietly. Aisha wiped her eyes again and again, but the tears kept coming. I looked around the room and whispered, "So this is my life now?" No one answered. That silence hurt more than words. Days passed like heavy stones. I stopped going outside much. I stopped answering calls. Sarah didn't call me either. At first, I kept checking my phone every few minutes. Then every hour. Then I stopped checking it all. Because the silence became normal. One evening, I was sitting outside the room when an old man living next door approached me. He sat beside me slowly. "You are the boy who moved in recently?" I nodded. He studied my face. "You look like you lost something important." I smiled without emotion. "I lost everything." He stayed quiet for a moment, then said, "I think I saw your wife before." My body stiffened slightly. "When?" He pointed toward the main road. "2 or 3 times. She came here in a black car. Always meeting a man." My heart slowed. "What man?" I asked. He thought for a second. "Rich looking. Expensive clothes." He didn't look local. My throat went dry. "Did you hear his name?" The old man nodded slowly. "Horace. I heard her call him that once." That name hit me like a sharp crack in my chest. Horace. I repeated it silently in my mind. The old man continued, "They used to meet at a cafe near the highway. Very private." I stood up suddenly. "Are you sure?" He looked at me calmly. "Son, old eyes don't lie. Only people do." I walked back into the room slowly. Omar saw my face immediately. "What happened?" I told him everything. His expression changed instantly. "Sit down," he said. I sat. He pulled out his phone. I already started checking Rashid. I frowned. "Why?" "Because I didn't trust him from day one," he replied. He showed me files, photos, and records. Rashid had multiple complaints under different names. Fake signatures. Property manipulation cases. All buried under legal confusion. I felt something burning inside me. Not sadness this time. Anger. Slow and heavy. Omar looked at me carefully. "Now you see it?" I nodded slowly. "I see it." Abba, who had been silent for days, finally spoke. "So it was planned," he said quietly. No one answered immediately. Because the truth was already sitting in the room with us. Aisha whispered, "How could someone do this to him?" I didn't answer her. Because I was asking myself the same question. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying everything. Sarah's smile. Her calm voice. The papers. The signatures. The silence. I kept thinking, where did I go wrong? Was it love? Or was it blindness? The next day, Omar came back with more information. "She is connected to Horace in business deals," he said. Not just casually. My jaw tightened. So it was never about love. Omar shook his head. It was about the house. I stood up slowly. For the first time, I felt something shifting inside me. Like broken pieces rearranging. Not healing. Just changing shape. I started walking around the small room. "I worked for years," I said slowly. I suffered every day. I trusted her with everything. Omar replied quietly, and she trusted your trust. That line stayed in my head. Trusted my trust. I stopped walking. My fists clenched. I want proof, I said. Omar nodded. Then we get it. From that day, everything changed. We started digging deeper. Omar contacted someone who knew legal cases. I met a lawyer who agreed to look at my documents again. Every new detail felt like another knife slowly coming out of hiding. Sarah was not just involved. She was leading parts of it. And Rashid was not acting alone. There were names. Patterns. Connections. Every truth hurt more than the last. But something inside me stopped breaking. Instead, it started hardening. Abba noticed it one evening. You're changing, he said. I looked at him. I have to. He nodded slowly. Just don't lose yourself while trying to get justice. I didn't answer. Because I wasn't sure who I was anymore. At night, I stood outside the room alone. The wind was cold. The city lights looked far away, like another life. I whispered to myself, was I too trusting, or was I just weak? No answer came. But inside me, one thing was clear now. The man who lost everything in silence was gone. And something else was starting to wake up. Something that no longer believed in love the same way. Something that only understood truth and revenge. I remember the exact moment everything inside me stopped feeling like confusion and started turning into understanding. It didn't happen suddenly. It came in pieces, like broken glass slowly forming a shape I could finally recognize. Omar called me that night. I found something important, he said. I sat up immediately. Tell me. His voice was serious. It's about Sarah and Horace. My chest tightened. What about them? There was a short pause. Then he said, they knew each other before you were even engaged. I went silent. That sentence didn't just hurt me. It changed the meaning of everything I had lived through. I whispered, before engagement? Omar replied, yes. I checked call records, meeting logs, and some financial links. They were connected before you ever entered the picture. I leaned back against the wall. So I was part of something already running. Omar didn't answer immediately. That silence was enough. The next morning, I met him in person. He brought files in a small bag and placed them in front of me. Read carefully, he said. I opened the first file. There were dates. Names. Meetings. Sarah's name appeared again and again alongside Horace. My hands tightened slowly around the papers. I whispered, she planned this. Omar nodded. Not alone. But yes. I kept reading. It showed how Horace invested in property deals. How names were changed. How ownerships were transferred quietly using legal loopholes. And then I saw Rashid's name. Repeated patterns. Multiple cases. Same method. Different victims. I closed the file slowly. My voice came out low. So Rashid wasn't just careless. Omar replied, he is part of a system. That word stayed in my mind. System. Not mistake. Not accident. System. I looked at Omar. Why me? He didn't hesitate. Because your house was easy to target. New property. Clean documents. Trusting owner. I laughed once. But it wasn't humor. It was disbelief turning into something sharper. So I was just convenient, I said. Omar nodded slightly. Yes. That night, I didn't sleep. For the first time, I didn't cry either. I just lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment again. Sarah smiling. Sarah holding my hand. Sarah asking me to trust her. And me, believing every word. The next day, Abba came to sit beside me. He didn't ask questions. He just looked at my face for a long time. Then he said quietly, "You are not the same boy I saw a few weeks ago." I looked at him. Am I better or worse? He shook his head. Different. I nodded slowly. He continued, "Pain changes people. But don't let it turn you blind." I replied, "I am not blind anymore." Abba studied me carefully. "Then what are you?" I paused. Then said, "Aware." He sighed softly. "Good. But awareness without control becomes destruction." Those words stayed with me longer than I expected. Omar came back later that evening. He had more details. "Rashid has another ongoing case," he said. "This time it's linked to fake ownership transfers across 3 cities." I asked, "Is he going to be caught?" Omar replied, slowly. "But yes." I nodded. Then I asked something I had avoided asking for days. "And Sarah?" Omar looked at me carefully. "She is not officially charged in anything yet," he said. "But her connections are clear." I closed my eyes for a moment. Not sadness. Not shock. Just acceptance. Slowly, I stood up. "I don't want emotions in this anymore," I said. Omar raised an eyebrow. "What do you want then?" I looked at him directly. "Truth. Evidence. Patience." He studied me for a second, then nodded. "Good. Because anger makes mistakes." I replied quietly, "I already made enough mistakes." From that day, something inside me changed. I stopped calling Sarah. I stopped waiting for messages. I stopped hoping she would explain herself. Hope was no longer useful. Only facts mattered now. Omar and I started organizing everything properly. Every document. Every record. Every contact. We were not rushing anymore. We were building. One evening, I sat alone outside the rented room. The wind was calm. The sky was dark. I thought about Sarah again. But this time, there was no pain. Only clarity. I said softly to myself, "She didn't just betray me. She studied me." And that realization hurt less than I expected. Because pain had already done its job. It had removed illusion. Later that night, Abba came and sat beside me. He didn't speak for a long time. Then he said, "What will you do when you face her again?" I looked forward. Not angry. Not emotional. Just steady. "I won't chase her," I said. "I won't beg. I won't shout." Abba asked, "Then?" I replied slowly, "I will let truth reach her." He nodded once. "And what if she never regrets?" I paused. Then said, "Truth doesn't need regret to work." That night, I understood something important. I was no longer the man who lost everything in confusion. I was becoming the man who would rebuild everything through clarity. Not with revenge. Not with noise. But with patience that destroys lies quietly. And for the first time since everything fell apart, I felt control returning to my hands. I didn't go back to being the man I used to be. That version of me died the day I walked out of my house. What remained was something quieter, colder, and more focused. Omar called me early that morning. "We are meeting a legal advisor today," he said. I replied, "Good. I'm ready." He paused for a second. "You sound different." I answered simply, I am different. We met the lawyer in a small office near the old market. His name was Mr. Cameron. He looked serious, not the type who wasted words. Omar spoke first. We need help building a strong case. Property fraud. Illegal transfer. Possible network. Mr. Cameron looked at me directly. Are you prepared for what this involves? I nodded. I already lost everything. There is nothing left to lose. He studied me for a moment, then said, That's usually when people become dangerous. I didn't reply. We showed him everything we had collected so far. Documents. Records. Screenshots. Notes. Omar had been organizing it like a system, just like he said before. Mr. Cameron leaned back. This is bigger than a personal dispute. Omar said, We know. I added, I just want truth in court. The lawyer nodded slowly. Then we do it step by step. No emotion. Only proof. Those words stayed in my head. No emotion. Only proof. For the first time in weeks, I felt something stable inside me. Not peace. Structure. Outside the office, Aisha was waiting. She stood up quickly when she saw me. How did it go? She asked. I looked at her tired face. She had been crying less now, but her eyes still carried pain. It's starting, I said. She nodded slowly. Good. Then she surprised me by smiling a little. You sound stronger. I looked away. I don't know if it's strength. It just feels like I stopped breaking. Aisha stepped closer. That's the same thing. For a moment, I didn't speak. Then she said softly, Abba is worried about you. I replied, I know. She hesitated. He says you don't talk anymore. I looked at her. Talking doesn't help anymore. Planning does. She didn't argue. That evening, Omar came back with more files. He placed them on the table without saying anything. I asked, What is it? He said, More connections. Horace didn't work alone in other cities either. Same pattern. Same lawyer network. I flipped through the pages slowly. Everything matched. Every fraud followed the same method. My voice was low. So this is not personal. It's a system. Omar nodded. Exactly. I closed the file. Good, I said. He frowned. Good. I looked at him. Because systems can be exposed. That night, I started doing something I never thought I would do. I began recording. Every call that came from unknown numbers. Every message attempt. Every time Sarah or someone connected tried to reach me. At first, my hand shook when I pressed record. But after a few tries, it stopped shaking. Because emotion was no longer driving me. Strategy was. One evening, my phone rang. Unknown number. I stared at it for a few seconds, then answered. Silence. Then her voice. Sarah. Why are you ignoring me? She asked softly. I didn't respond immediately. She continued, We should talk. Everything can be explained. I listened carefully. Her tone was calm. Almost gentle. Like nothing had happened. I said nothing. She repeated, I never wanted things to go like this. Still silence from my side. Then she added, You're overreacting. We can fix this. That word again. Fix. I finally spoke. My name is not on my house anymore, I said quietly. What exactly are we fixing? She paused. Then said, Legal things are not personal. I replied, They were when I signed them. Silence again. Then she said softly, "You've changed." I answered, "Yes." She asked, "For the better?" I said, "For reality." Then I ended the call. I didn't feel anger after that. Just distance. Omar watched me from across the room. "You handled that well," he said. I replied, "There was nothing to feel." Aisha came in later with tea. She placed it beside me and said, "You don't smile anymore." I looked at her. "Smiling is not useful right now." She sat down. "Do you ever miss how things used to be?" I thought about it. The old house. The trust. The belief. Then I said, "No." Because what I miss never actually existed. That answer made her quiet. Abba walked in later that night. He looked at the table full of documents. "You are building something," he said. I nodded. "A case?" he asked, "or revenge?" I looked at him. "No," I said. "Justice." He studied me for a long moment. Then said softly, "Just don't let justice turn into hatred." I replied, "I am not chasing hatred anymore." Abba nodded slowly, like he understood something he didn't fully like. After he left, I sat alone with Omar. He said, "She will try again." They always do when pressure builds. I nodded. "Let her." He raised an eyebrow. "You're not reacting at all now." I looked at the papers in front of me. "I already reacted once," I said. "It cost me everything." Omar leaned back. "So what now?" I answered calmly. "Now I build something that doesn't break." And for the first time since everything started falling apart, I wasn't surviving anymore. I was preparing. I didn't see Sarah for a long time after I started building my case. Not because I was avoiding her, but because I was finally moving forward while her world was starting to slow down. Omar called me one evening, his voice sharp with urgency. "It's happening," he said. I asked calmly, "What is?" He replied, "Horace is under investigation." I closed my eyes for a moment. "For what exactly?" "Fraud," he said. "Multiple property cases. Fake ownership transfers. The same pattern we've been tracking." I didn't feel surprise. I felt confirmation. "Good," I said quietly. Omar paused. "Just good?" I replied, "It means truth is moving." The next few days passed like shifting ground. News started spreading quietly at first. Then faster. Horace's name appeared in legal circles. People started asking questions. Then came the official notice. Investigation opened. Freezing of assets. Multiple complaints filed. And then, the biggest shock. Rashid was arrested. Omar came to me that night holding a printed report. "He's in custody," he said. I looked at the paper. Finally. Aisha, who was sitting nearby, whispered, "So it's really happening." Abba didn't speak at first. He just looked tired in a way I had never seen before. Then he said softly, "Justice takes time, but it arrives." I nodded. But inside me, I knew something important was still ahead. Sarah. She was still free. Still silent. Still watching. The next morning, I finally filed my case in court. I remember standing outside the building for a moment before entering. Omar looked at me. "Ready?" I nodded. I've been ready since the day I left my house. Inside, the courtroom felt colder than I expected. Not physically, but emotionally. Everything there was controlled, structured, and serious. No emotions mattered there. Only facts. Mr. Cameron stood beside me as our lawyer. He spoke clearly in court. We present evidence of illegal property transfer, misuse of legal documentation, and coordinated fraud involving multiple individuals. I stood silently behind him. Sarah arrived later. When she walked in, I saw her immediately. She looked different. Still dressed neatly, still composed, but something in her eyes had changed. Uncertainty. For the first time. Rashid wasn't there. Horace wasn't there either. But their absence made her stand more alone than ever. When she saw me, she froze for a second. Just 1 second. But I noticed it. Omar stood behind me on one side. Aisha sat quietly in the back row. Sarah's eyes shifted between them and me. Then I saw it. Her confidence cracked slightly. Not fully. But enough. The hearing began. Evidence was presented one by one. Documents. Signatures. Call records. Financial links. Meetings. Mr. Cameron spoke with calm precision. Each point was like a nail being placed carefully into a structure that had already started collapsing. Sarah tried to respond. At first, confidently. "This is misunderstanding," she said. But her voice wasn't as steady as before. She looked at me once. "I never intended harm," she said. I didn't react. No anger. No interruption. Just silence. Then Omar was called to testify briefly about the document trail he had helped collect. Aisha also gave a short statement about what she witnessed during the house transfer phase. Sarah listened to everything. And slowly, I saw her expression change. She wasn't angry anymore. She wasn't controlling the room anymore. She was losing it. Not emotionally loud. Just quietly slipping. At one point, her eyes met mine again. And this time, she looked scared. Not of me. Of what was already in motion. Of what couldn't be stopped anymore. The judge reviewed the documents carefully. Every page turned felt like another layer of her control being removed. I stayed silent the entire time. I didn't speak unless asked. I didn't react. I didn't argue. Because I had learned something by now. Revenge doesn't need noise. Truth does not shout. It simply stands. And everything false eventually collapses around it. After the hearing ended for the day, Sarah walked out before me. But I saw her pause near the door. For a moment, she looked back. Not at the court. At me. And for the first time, I didn't see confidence. I saw realization. Omar walked beside me outside. "She's starting to feel it," he said. I replied, "It's not about feeling." He looked at me. "Then what is it about?" I answered quietly, "Consequences." Aisha joined us outside. She looked at me carefully. "Are you okay?" I thought about it. Then said, "I'm stable." She nodded slowly. "That's enough." Abba came last. He placed his hand on my shoulder. "You didn't become what they wanted you to become," he said. I looked at him. "What did I become?" He paused. Then said, "Someone who doesn't break easily anymore." I didn't answer. Because I knew the next stage was coming. Sarah's world was falling now. Piece by piece. And I was no longer inside it. I was standing outside it. Watching it collapse through truth, patience, and time. And for the first time, I wasn't the one falling.